Aloha, literati. Welcome to the Critiki-Bar. We are so pleased to be joining you today at the BookFest. I hope you've all been learning a lot. And just to take you through how we're going to approach your first pages, we are an author and an agent walk into a bar, which is what we did and became fast friends and discovered that we look at such different things when we read the first pages. I'm, of course, a literary agent, and so I focus on the career aspect of what is on that page, what is really jumping off that page, what would make me turn the page. And David is one of the masterful writers of our time and also a distinguished professor of writing, so he focuses a lot more on the crafting. David.
Katharine, well, thank you, everybody, and welcome to Critiki-Bar. Katharine and I are old friends, and because she's an agent, because I'm a writer, we very often see things quite differently. And Katharine will focus and will spot things immediately and identify them as in the context of the profession, or as what we'll call career. I don't concern myself so much about the marketability of a work. I'm pretty much a structuralist. My approach is as a writer, a professional writer, an editor, and a teacher of writing. And so we're going to go over 6 first pages today. I think each one is roughly 250 words. And Katharine, we're going to swap back and forth. Katharine will read one, then I'll comment first. I'll read, and Katharine will comment first. And what we'll do is we'll give you, I think, what are the 2 most important and perhaps hopefully diverse views of your work. Katharine has immense insights to career, and I'm fairly well versed in issues of craft. And that should cover it, I think. But I think by the end of the day, if you're one of the writers, hopefully you'll get some good advice. And if you're one of the people in the audience watching, hopefully you'll learn on someone else's work. So, Desiree, if you bring up the first story, I will read, and Katharine will start the comments when we're done. And away we go. And by the way, everybody, thank you for joining us. On behalf of Black Chateau and my dear friend Katharine and myself, thank you so much for joining us. And at the end, by the way, hang around. We're going to do 6 pieces, and then we're going to have a not insubstantial amount of time for questions and answers that you can send in your chats. And Desiree will send it to me, and Katharine will answer your questions. So stick around when we're done. And starting pistol, here we go. Kennedy Neff was nothing like the other students in detention. It wasn't that she did not deserve to be there, she did. But while the other detainees stealthily scrolled their social media feeds to pass the time, Kennedy decided to change it. She spun the long arm of the wall clock forward to a time in the near future when her sentence would be complete. She manipulated the clock without being anywhere near it, but no one in the classroom noticed. No one ever noticed anything Kennedy Neff did. It would be several months before she realized what a luxury that had been. When Kennedy grew bored of the clock, she focused her attention on a motivational poster of the cosmos, which read, "Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you'll land amongst the stars." 4 gold push pins fastened it to a corkboard. Kennedy zeroed in on one of them. The push pin sprang from the corkboard and hit the dusty tile floor with the tiniest of clanks. The top left corner of the poster folded down behind Mrs. Barnes, who was currently inhaling a sleeve of mini-powered donuts. Kennedy closed her eyes and tried to sense the energy of the other 3 pushpins, hoping she could get them to pop out in unison. Mrs. Barnes clapped her hands together, and a cloud of powdered sugar flew into the air. "There will be no sleeping, Miss Neff." "Sorry," Kennedy said, even though she was more startled than sorry. All right, 250 words. Katharine, first impressions as an agent.
I actually quite like this. I like the way we were kept in a moment. I worked out, I think that Kennedy Neff is slightly older in detention, but remember, the thing about first pages is we really are blind. We don't know anything. So I do get a character here. I always think it's a good idea to make certain especially when editorial readers, meaning agents and editors, people who read for a living, not just a reader who can appreciate your work or someone who might be in a supportive environment with you in an MFA program or in a writer's critique group. We're reading to immediately get what we might say to an editor. So even though so much takes place in a work, we're zeroing in on the first thing we see, which is what the writer's in charge of, and what sort of sensibility does the writer have, and what genre might this be, and these are the things one thinks of. So I did like that I got a pretty substantial portrait of Kennedy Neff, although I almost liked the line about it would be several months before she realized what a luxury that had been. Possibly that's all you need to kind of create the foreshadowing of the story that's to come. I smiled at the sleeve of Mini Powdered Donuts reference, so I definitely got a character here, and that is key when an agent first reads your fiction.
Yeah, so Katharine, here's my thing. I agree with you. I think it has a real lovely, a very well calibrated humor to it. You know, I get a sense that the teller of this story is wry and is a good observer, inhaling a sleeve of donuts and stuff. I mean, that's, when I read that, when I read Shoot for the Moon, You'll Land Among the Stars, I get a very gentle sense of humor. This is not going to be slapstick or pie in the face kind of humor, but I think very keen and observational. And that, I think, is very promising, right? So when I read this now, but a couple structural craft things. It's not because it's badly written. It's not because of that. I would cut the entire first paragraph. I say that because, for me, the story begins in the second paragraph. When Kennedy grew bored of the clock, she focused her attention on the motivational force of the cosmos. That, to me, is where it starts. The opening paragraph is telling. The opening paragraph, no one ever noticed anything Kennedy Neff did. It would be several months before she realized what a luxury that had been. That's a POV violation, to me, is since Kennedy can't know what's going to happen in a month or so, for me, it can't be on the page. I found the opening paragraph to not be necessary, as so often narrative paragraphs. Now, when I say narrative, folks, here's what I mean. It's narrative whenever I have the sense, or the reader has the sense, that the writer is speaking directly to the reader, not the character speaking to the reader, or the reader living the world through the character's eyes, but the writer speaking directly to the reader. And to me, that opening paragraph is not Kennedy's life at all. That is the writer speaking directly to me, telling me what's going to happen to Kennedy in the future, and that she was different from the other kids. And that's not the kind of stuff that Kennedy would think about herself. It's not because it's badly written. There's some fun stuff in there. I would start it with her spinning the wall clock arm. I would start there and get rid of all the stuff about what's going to happen, and how different she was. And I'd rather you show me how different she is, Katharine, than tell me. But when this piece shows, I think it's quite charming. And it does introduce us to a character who is different, is plainly different. So I don't really need to be told Kennedy Neff was nothing like the other students in detention, because Kennedy Neff can turn the hands of a clock with her mind. So kind of sine qua non, she's different from the other kids. I don't need to be told that. But yeah, I agree with you. This has a very nice feel to it, and it feels gentle and insightful.
Yes, but
another thing.
Oh, sorry.
Small thing. I want to finish up because I don't forget this. So one of my things, folks, is if you're going to write a 80,000 word book, I like it to be 80,000 words, not 85 or 90. One of the ways you can do that is by vetting every word, and I mean every word. Mrs. Barnes clapped her hands together. First of all, you can't clap anything but your hands, and all clapping is together. Now, that seems like a small thing, but if you take that discipline throughout an entire book, you will find thousands and thousands of words to pull out. So Mrs. Barnes clapped, and a cloud of powdered sugar. Of course, she can't clap anything but her hands, and when you clap, it is together. So that's 3 words that can come out. And again, if you take that discipline through a whole manuscript, you'll find thousands of words that don't need, shrugged her shoulders, looked up at the stars, that sort of thing. Sorry to interrupt, Katharine, but I'll turn it back over to you.
I would make some points, some general ones. I didn't get at first glance that there might be a magical story universe here. So it took a closer read to understand that Kennedy may have a superpower of some kind, that she can sense the energy of the pushpins and pop them out. And then I only then do understand why she's nothing like the other students in detention. So I would say in general, if we're going into a story universe with magic in it, you don't want to presume we get it as fast as you might want us to get it. It's there, it's absolutely there. But I think that it's sometimes a good idea to make sure that that's very, very clear in a magical way.
And here's our first contradiction, Katharine. I disagree. Because that to me would be a violation of the POV. Kennedy Neff is magical. But what I like about this piece is that she does not view herself as being special. She says the world views me as different, but Kennedy Neff does not think, whoa, I'm magical. I like how quotidian and common and customary her magic is. She uses it to annoy people. She uses it to get out of class. This is just like your ability to finger and thumb. This is very natural to Kennedy. So I disagree with you that the writer should allow Kennedy Neff to be self-conscious of her own magical abilities. I actually thought that was one of the better attributes of this piece, is that it was just de rigueur, natural for Kennedy. She didn't think, I have magic. It was just common.
I don't know that she has to say I have magic, but I definitely missed the moment where she's able to manipulate the clock and spin up the time. And I could see that, of course, immediately in a movie, but I didn't quite get that was happening, quote unquote, in the real of this story. It might have been imagined. It's only the second time she does something fairly magical. And then I started to wonder, become quite engaged with what magic are we talking about. So just thinking agent thoughts, if I'm introducing a magical character, a witch, a warlock, a vampire, I like to be a little grounded in the magic right away, because the writers are evaluated in how magical a world this is.
I'm just going to disagree. Kennedy closed her eyes and tried to sense the energy of the other three pushpins. Tried to sense the energy of the other three pushpins. If that's not blatant, I don't know what more you need. We disagree on that one. I thought that was very well handled. But there you go.
Well, we both like it.
Critiki-Bar.
But I make the point that, remember what a page one does. We have no clue. She could be fantasizing, for all I know. That's all I'm saying.
Why do you have to know at this point? Why can't she be fantasizing?
She could be, but...
There you go. Leave it. She could be. I don't think it's important that we know on page one, Katharine. I don't. But again, folks, I love you, Katharine, but this is a difference between an agent and a writer. The agent's like, I want to know the genre. I want to know how to sell it. I want to know where to market it. And I'm like, no, leave it alone. It's perfect as it is. But this is maybe the value of our discussion today, because, don't fully listen to either one of us. Because Katharine needs to know what genre to put this in. And me, I don't. I thought it was well calibrated.
Actually, I thought it was very well done. I agree with you there.
Yeah. All right. What do you think? We done there, Miss Katharine?
I think so.
All right. Why don't we do the next one, Desiree? And Miss Katharine, you read to me. I'll go first.
Okay, waiting for it to come up. There was no one to hear the screaming, even if a hunter did scale these mountains. The sharp gusts of winds whistling through the glacial and rocky outcroppings would have drowned out his torturous cries. It took time to understand these agonizing howls were coming from deep inside me and not from the corpse lying below. While I observed a body half buried into the glacial ice, I could not reach out and touch it. While I heard the shrieking winds, I could not feel the frigid snow being pushed up into towering drifts. While I shouted my anguish aloud, my words fell silent upon the mountainside. If it is true I existed, then it must also be true I am not out of body. I am not of body. Sorry. Countless days and countless nights have rolled past my sight, allowing me to take notice of the gradual change in weather, though I am numb to it. Once where men and women and animal had traversed snow-covered pathways and scaled steep, icy terrains were now exposed. Rocky trails. This I knew as a sign the snows have ended, offering visible evidence of the natural life of springtime soon returning. But regardless, the body below me remained frozen. How long has it been for this lost memory of a man? How long has it been for me? As time crept on, I looked upon the stranger who lies face down, his legs encased deep into solid ice, while his upper body remains exposed, folded over at its waist.
All right. I'm going to talk, first of all, I think it's a fascinating thing to see, to start describing, you know, this milieu, a frozen body. But this is a craft thing, okay, not the story thing. I found some tense shifts. I looked past tense upon the stranger who lies, present tense. You can't mix your tenses. It's taboo. You just can't. You have to be past tense throughout the entire thing. Be careful with little mistakes because that's a mistake. So look, if it is true I existed, then it must also be also true that I am not of body. But after a sentence it says, while I shouted my anguish aloud, my words fell silent. So I've got some tense mixes, and that's taboo. You have to all be present tense or all be past tense. Now, the structure of the sentences, the problem I had is that the human mind, and this is a craft thing, the reader can only carry so many images in our heads at a time per sentence. Even if a hunter did scale these mountains, the sharp gusts of winds whistling through the glacial and rocky outcroppings would have drowned out his torturous cries. Now look, I've got even if a hunter did scale these mountains, the sharp gusts of wind whistling through glacial and rocky outcroppings would have drowned out torturous cries. It's too much. It's too much. And that style is consistent far too much throughout the whole piece. While I heard the shrieking winds, I could not feel the frigid snow being pushed up into towering drifts. So I've got shrieking winds, frigid snow, towering drifts. I've got these sentences need to be broken down, I think, much shorter. Countless days, endless nights. My sight allowed me to take notice of gradual change, though I'm numb to it. I think I would have just liked countless days and endless nights have rolled past my sight. I take notice of the gradual change in weather, but I am dumb to it. And give the reader a chance to carry each phrase and not have to put it down to pick up the third and fourth image per sentence. It's lovely stuff. It's lovely stuff. It is. Each sentence contains really some lovely stuff, and it's a beautiful, beautiful image. Very cold, very frigid. But I think that prose-wise, it's a little urgent. It's a little packed. I'd get in there with a scalpel and cut some of these sentences down to 2 and 3 pieces. And then a lot of this lovely language will have a chance to stand on its own, right? Rather than torturous, whistling, sharp, rocky, glacial, all crammed into one next to each other. That's my biggest critique. I think it's story-wise, I found it like, wow, I want to know what's going on. And somebody knows how to write. I think somebody needs to work a little bit on editing.
I would add some general points. First, I find as an agent, I'm a stickler for things like grounding. I really feel that I speak for other agents in this. Being grounded is almost more important than anything else when I look at first pages, because there's a certain grappling that goes on when you're trying to understand who's speaking and what their circumstance might be. And I get a lot of interesting imagery here. Certainly I get the cold and the mountainside and the sense of a corpse below, but I'm working a little hard to understand who's speaking. He doesn't appear to know the corpse, who the corpse belongs to. I'm not certain if he is in body and dying and caught in a snowdrift, or has he actually left his body? I don't even know necessarily that he's he, but I'm working very hard to understand the moment that I'm placed in. And I know I'm a bit of a stickler for it, but I think it's important to make sure that before anyone works with literary conceits or even imageries or a sense of place, to make sure we know what's going on, because I'm getting a bit busy with things like lost memory of a man. I assume that's the dead fellow. He does ask, how long has it been for me, if we're dealing with a he. And I'm just trying to understand some of the timing here, because if he says that he knows that the snows have ended, that springtime soon returning, I'm not sure if, again, I'm in one moment of time or if there's some way in which he's left his body that I'm doing into, because I think it might be doing that. An interesting thing about listening to people critique your work is how many ways they get things wrong. It can really be an education. But just reading as an agent, I'm thinking, what would I say about a scene or a character to an editor? And so for me, it has to be very vivid and not just for mood or image, but so that I actually know where the character is. And I'm not entirely sure here where I am or what state of life or half-life I'm looking at. Or afterlife.
Yeah, and yeah. I'll just follow up, Katharine, with that to say, yeah, the POV was a little difficult to glean from this. POV is not one of those things, folks, that you should make your reader wait for, right? We don't know. It feels like a ghost, or maybe it's a mountain talking. I don't know, but I mean, we very much want to know who our representative on the page is very quickly, very soon, like very soon. I might, Katharine, I think you're right about that. I think we very much want to, if it is true I existed, then it must all be true I'm not a body. I go, okay, that could be metaphysical, it could be rhetorical, it could be actual. I'd like a little firmer image of who I am telling this story. That said, Katharine, I think that if some of these sentences were cut down into separate parts and we strengthen the POV, this could be very haunting. There's a lot of eloquence here. I just think some of the eloquence is covered up though because it's too clammed up close to the next eloquent phrase. I'd like to see these trimmed.
Just to underscore my point, when a character tells me it is also true that I am not a body, I go straight to a metaphysical or afterlife-y place. Then I think I'm reading that that's true because countless days and endless nights have rolled past my sight, allowing me to take notice of the gradual change in weather. So countless days means you couldn't really be alive in this circumstance, I don't think, if the days are countless. So I'm very busy with the state of the speaker. And that's the point I want to convey. We get busy with something, and the only thing we're working with are the clues that we find, like those.
Yes, and I think we should also explain why we're both wearing really bad fashion, because it is a Critiki-Bar, and this is how we dress in the Critiki-Bar, just so y'all know why we're wearing. You look lovely. I, however, don't often dress in these lovely colors. All right, well, if you're good with that, Katharine, you want to move on to the next one?
Sure.
All right, and Katharine, I have to ask you out loud, if you could turn up your microphone volume. I'm struggling a little bit to hear everything you say.
Is that better?
I don't know until you start talking. We'll figure it out.
How about that?
That's good, thank you.
Ooh.
All right, number 3. The excessively blonde woman was waggling a rubbery, oversized pink dildo in my face. Now, first of all, I wonder what an oversized pink dildo is. I don't. Right off the bat, I'm like, okay, do they come in? I'd like a medium, but moving on. Her orange tan and big spidery eyelashes were too close for comfort, but I didn't flinch. I was used to this kind of rubbish, never show weakness to the enemy. This was, however, the first time anyone had threatened me by brandishing a dildo at me, and I hoped the last. Why do hens parties think carrying phallic symbols around? That's not a phallic symbol, by the way. That is an actual phallus. Just throw that out there. Phallic symbols around will improve their evening. Who first said hanging out with my friends and drinking is fun, but it'll even be more fun if we drink those drinks through penis-shaped straws? I've often wondered that. It doesn't make sense. Think about it. I'm getting married to the love of my life in a ceremony costing thousands of dollars, looking the most beautiful I have ever looked in a dress that I have dreamed of wearing all my life. My soul mate, which is one word, not two, and I will express our undying love for each other in a beautiful, moving ceremony in front of friends and family. But first, I need to get monumentally trashed in public while drinking my body weight in cocktails. I must also have plastic penises, peni, pinned to my dress, pop on a crappy fake veil, and a hot pink sash, and be obnoxious to a security guard. If you do know who first decided this, feel free to slap them for me. The blonde adjusted her pink maid of honor sash and whispered, I'm a lawyer. You must let you beach. I'm a lawyer. You must let you beach. I guess that's an adequate slur. Katharine, have at it.
Well, it certainly is an arresting opening. I am a veteran of many a horrible bridesmaid evening. I would say a couple of things jump out at me here. I might suggest just throwing out ideas that it might have been easier to establish you or the writer as the bride-to-be, so that we quite understand a little bit more about the hen party here, because if the maid of honor, the sash-wearing, excessively blonde woman isn't known to the bride, I'm not sure what that means exactly. I got busy with that. And it's a funny moment. It's a funny scene. Certainly, I think a plastic penis is always needed for these things, but I can see that the speaker might not agree. So I'm a little confused about the bride in this setting. Some of it's quite funny, but I also ask myself, well, what is her situation in this party? Was this a surprise party? Was this, unexpected in some way? And why doesn't she know the maid of honor? Because now I don't know if exactly who is speaking and what, why the scene is somehow upsetting to the bride, who I would assume be nice and fresh. It says, though, I was used to this kind of rubbish, never show weakness to the enemy, so I'm not entirely sure if that's someone other than the bride looking at this.
Yeah, Katharine, I have to echo a lot of that. I'm lost as to who the teller of the story is. Similarly to the last one, where we had kind of an Arctic ghost, maybe. I get a lot of mixed signals here. Look, it's fun. Let me start with the good stuff. It's fun. And somebody has a really great wit. And somebody may have had the kind of life experiences that could add up to a pretty funny narrative book, right? So, I can see that somebody's got something to say here. And that's cool. There's a platform. There's a perch from which to tell this story. Somebody's got some guts because they come out with dildos right out of the gate. So as soon as I read dildo, I go, okay, all right. Well, we've thrown off all the shackles. If we started with dildos, where can this go? So in terms of the reader's experience, you go, all right, the starter's gate just went up. We got the green flag. Let's go. So somebody's making a promise here that this is going to be a wild and crazy ride, because you don't throw dildo at line 3, unless you're going to keep some promises, right? Now, here's the issue. Structurally, I'm with you. I don't know who's telling me this story. The excessively blonde woman tells me that the teller does not know this excessively blonde woman's name, right? Just because it comes off like a stranger. The blonde adjusted her pink maid of honor. So I'm like, why do you not know the maid of honor when you are at this, a bridesmaid party? I always have little things like, it's not a phallic symbol. A dildo is an actual phallus. And though that may be a small thing, like I've said, I'm very much about structural and craft. what I have in this opening is I have a character who's being reactive to other people, and that doesn't tell me anything about the teller. All I'm getting is that the teller feels threatened, and I don't know why. This was, however, the first time anyone had threatened me by brandishing a dildo at me. Of course, we don't need the at me because it's brandishing, but I don't know why this person feels threatened. Is there? So I get this isn't as narrowly laser beam focused as commercial fiction needs to be. You know, I don't know who the POV is. I don't know who the teller is. I don't know where this takes place, if this is Vegas, if this is in the forest. I don't know if this is 1932 or 2021. I don't know. I don't have context for this. And I think that's what you were saying. My major issue is on the opening of our chapters, opening of our books, folks, it's good to not have characters who are reacting to somebody else. Because this opening is more of a profile of this blonde maid of honor than it is of the teller of the story. Teller of the story just like, I don't like this. And the sum total of what I'm reading is I have someone who does not like this. Yet, as you said, Katharine, I'm used to this. So I go, okay, well, what kind of person would be used to this? So it gives me a sense of maybe it's another woman telling me the story, somebody who sees a lot of their friends get married. Okay, I'm getting some context. But overall, I'd like to see this story, this energy, this humor. I'd like to see this whole thing pushed down a couple paragraphs. And I'd like the first couple paragraphs to say, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I'm about to go subject myself to. You know, that way when I can be there, I haven't got a visual. I don't know if this is in a nightclub. I don't know if this is someone's backyard. I have no visual. I just have a party, a dildo, and a blonde lady. And to me, it's not visual enough. I like this, but like I said, I'd like to see it pushed down a couple paragraphs and to see a little more opening that says, here's who I am, here's where we are, here's why I'm unhappy. But it's fun and somebody's got a good wit.
I'd make another point, looking at it a second time, because remember, we're just letting these wash over us. We haven't studied them. I'm not 100% certain that the speaker is the bride, because she does say, I think it's she makes some qualifying points. Who first said hanging out with my friends, da-da-da-da. Doesn't make sense. Think about it. I'm getting married to the love of my life in a ceremony. She might be just thinking aloud. She might not be getting married. She might be waitstaff or something, which would make it a little funnier to be observing this ritual as opposed to living the ritual. But I'm left with something of a question in my mind about whether or not this is the bride or someone who's working in this wedding center, which is why she doesn't know the maid of honor exactly. I didn't
think it was the bride. I thought it was a member of the bridal party. But even so, whoever wrote this, if you're out there listening, Katharine and I both agree, you don't want your reader to wonder who the teller of the story is. Certainly don't want that to last more than the first couple lines. And in the previous piece, we go, is it a ghost? Is it not? Maybe it is. That's not good. And here we're like, well, who is it? Is it a maid? Which you're right, would be funny. Is it a bridesmaid? Is it, who's telling the story? In both instances, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of reasons. So these are, Katharine, I think we agree, these are just structural issues. They're written well, they're fun. And the teller of these stories is eloquent and got quite a vibrant voice. But you're right. I don't know. We just got a note from Desiree that the author just sent her a note that said it's the security guard. So that was really good instinct on your part, Katharine, that this was just somebody watching it. That said, I, the reader, need a visual immediately in every scene. I need a visual to be able to become this character. And here I don't know a security guard of what. I mean, thank you for clarifying that. But I don't know, is it a hotel, a motel? Is it a park? Is it a wedding venue? Keep this, push it down 1 or 2 paragraphs and give us some clarity. I'm a security guard and I see this crap all the time, and then see, that makes more sense with the threatened me. Now I get it. If it's a security guard, yeah, all right. But you can see, I'm going to assume it's a lady, Ms. Author, that we should not be put in a position of misconstruing, right? We should be able to construe, and that's all POV. I think a security guard's hilarious. That's a hilarious POV. Let us know.
But it is, for example, I was using this kind of rubbish, never show weakness to the enemy. Now I know what that means. But reading it, I had no idea where that humor was coming from. And yes, when you think about it of an agent, to actually call up an editor and say, it's told from the POV of a security guard at a wedding center. You see, we're trying to get our thoughts arrayed really from the get-go. So sometimes something is very, very funny later on, but you have to be grounded, which is one of my big words.
All humor is about context. All humor is context. Everything funny is funny instead of, or when humor is comparison. That's all it is. All humor is comparison. So you're right. For that to be funny, we have to have the context for it. That said, I'm going to stay on my grounds. This is fun. This is good stuff. This needs to be paragraph 3 and not paragraph 1. And then let her fly. Sounds fun. You ready to move on, my Critiki-Bar partner?
Yes.
My Critiki-Bartner? All right, Desiree, number 4, please. I will read to you, Miss Katharine. Now, as you all know, wait, I read the last one. I'm just so eager you read this one.
Now, as you all know, a magician is a very powerful man. He is filled with power that can burn holes through trees or crumble boulders. An ant, of course, is very small. She is unable to harm any other creature. Yet in the end, she proved to be the stronger, and this is how. A very long time ago, in a land far away, there lived a powerful magician named Parrot. He dwelt in a great castle at the top of the mountain and ruled the lands all about. He had no farmers, for everything was done with magic. He stood at the top of his castle, waved his hands, and the north wind plowed the land into neat furrows. Next, he commanded the east wind to sow the seeds. Another wave of his hands made the clouds water his plants, while the west wind plucked weeds from his fields. In autumn, the south wind scooped the bounty from the earth and harvested it. All this was very fine for Parrot. Down on the ground, where the winds and the rain played out their tasks, many of the creatures living in the fields were far from pleased, and so they called a meeting under the shadow of an old oak tree. There were grasshoppers and bees and birds and foxes and rabbits and all manner of beasts. I say it's high time something was done, said one of the beetles, who was always filled with suggestions of what other animals should be doing.
All right. I'm going to assume this is a children's book or a YA book just because of the tone and the message. And those are always difficult to be really articulate with as an editor because they're so voice dependent, right? So that said, I would still cut this first paragraph because I don't need it. I don't need to be told that a magician is very powerful. First of all, not all magicians are men, but I don't need to be told a magician's powerful when by the time I get down to the middle paragraph, I've got a guy basically creating an entire valley of fertile land by waves of his hands. So as is so often the case with narrative language, it's very often unnecessary because you end up showing me the thing you were telling me anyway. Here I find the same thing. I find that Tarat becomes very, very clearly powerful. I don't know if anybody's ever sat on a fire ant, but if you have, you know they are able to harm other creatures. So somebody hasn't been camping, because let me clue you in on that one. I very much like. See, man, when the story starts for me, Katharine, it starts when he's up on that mountaintop, on top of his castle, waving his hands, and the north wind plowed the land into neat furrows. Gorgeous. Commands the east wind to sow the seeds. Another wave of his hand, the clouds water the plants. And I'm liking that. And what I want to do is I want to be there when that happens. I don't want to be distant from it. I want to be there when it happens. I felt that this was compressed. I felt it was lovely. And I wanted an entire page of Tarat creating this world. I did. I just think it was such beautiful imagery and very powerful that I didn't get enough of it myself. All this was very fine for Tarat, which is, to me, too compressed. I don't know what fine for him means. You know, I mean, why does Tarat, who's a magician, need a farm? Why does he need a farm? If he's a magician, why can't he just say, tonight I'll have pasta primavera and a nice cold craft brew? I mean, so I like it. Don't think I don't like it, but I don't. Look, gang, fantasy, which this is clearly fantasy. Fantasy is all about world building, right? And I think you've got a really cool idea here, and Tarat's a fabulously broad character, but the world's a little unclear to me, just a little bit. Everything, he had no farmers, for everything was done with magic. And I don't know why he needs farmers. Why does he need farmers? If everything is done with magic, I need that. To me, Katharine put a question in my head. Although I love how it was done, I live in a world now where animals speak, grasshoppers and beasts, bees and birds and foxes and rabbits and all manner of beasts. And those ands have a very Aesop's fables feel to it. And so I know I'm reading a fable, and perhaps a young reader's fable. And I thought that the voice was very well calibrated. So I say to the author, hey, cool, run with this, but build me that world a little more. He dwelt in a great castle at the top of a mountain and ruled the lands all about. He had no farmers. Everything was done with magic. So, okay, in autumn, the south wind scooped the bounty from the earth and harvested it. But why? Does he have no people? I mean, do people live in this land? Why harvest the crops if there's no one to eat it? If there are people eat it, who are they? Why are they not the ones who are unhappy? Why is it the animals that are unhappy? And I'm not saying I don't like that, Katharine. I'm just struggling to make the pieces fit, right? I don't know. He's the only human being in this whole scene, yet he seems to live in Indiana, a magic Indiana with all these crops. And I like it, but I need it to make a little more sense for me. I want the reader the writer to think it out, think the world out, a little more depth, and give me that. I like the tone, I like the story, the opening, but I don't understand why it's the animals that are unhappy. I don't understand why it's very fine for Tarat. I don't know why he needs crops if he doesn't have people to eat it. I need those questions answered in a piece that I like.
I'd actually make some different points. Once the beetle begins to discuss the problem, the beetle who's always filled with suggestions of what other animals should be doing, I'm very engaged by the beetle and the stakes for the animals, which I think you need here, because I don't think you want, or in general, this is just my own reaction, I think it's always trickier to open with comments that are going to make a lot of sense when you've read a story and don't really when you open it. For example, an ant's very small, she's unable to harm any other creature, yet in the end she proved to be the stronger Mrs. Howe. I mean, I think if you're doing an Aesop's fable kind of anthology, for example, where that will be a motif through the stories, it would work. But just looking at a page, I get all the power of this magician who is, who can command the winds to work his farm. And I don't yet learn what the creatures living in the fields are dealing with. They're displeased, I get it, maybe their ecosystem's affected, and maybe this will be quite an interesting educational read for an age group. Here's an aging point. We read immediately to identify readers. So if this is intended for a younger reader, that's very different from an adult or even a middle grade reader. So this seems maybe middle gradish to me. I mean, I'm thinking it's a younger reader, but I could be wrong, just because, which is not to say that all fantasy is immediately for younger readers, but we're immediately asked to enter a world in which the animals have personalities, and so do the beetles. And I think that's always going to give you more latitude than description or comment, because his power as a magician is established, but it isn't yet established how entertaining his war or conflict or the stakes for the animals / insect life are going to be in relation to him. And I would say you can put something in there on page 1 to create the drama there, because the minute I see this interesting beetle, I'm a bit more engaged in the power than just the sense of the power that I've been introduced to and the part of the ritual.
All right. I buy that. Look, I'm just going to repeat my last point, then we can move on. I read 2 lines that I'd like. All this was very fine for Trap. I don't know why all this was very fine for Trap. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I love what he's doing, and I love the image, but I don't know why it's very fine for him, because I don't know what he's accomplishing. But I don't. I don't know why he needs farms. And then I read down on the ground where the winds and the rain played out their tasks, which is beautiful language. Many of the creatures living in the fields were far from pleased. Likewise, I don't know why they're not pleased, and I don't know why Tarat is. So, I mean, it's not enough to simply say that. And that's what I mean about world building and character building. Hey, look, writer, here's the good news. You don't want your editors and your readers to be saying, give me less. You always want them saying, give me more. And I think in this instance, my Critiki-Bar partner and I are saying, give us more. And that's always better news than, you need to cut this. I think I want it to be deeper. I want to be swept up into the world before I get to, I say something needs to be done. Like, well, whoa, Mr. Beetle, we're there a little fast. I don't know what's wrong, and so it's hard for me to sympathize with the beetle, because frankly, I didn't see nothing wrong. So it sounds fairly idyllic to me. Wind, rain, cloud, sun, no labor. Sounds beautiful. So I don't know why the beetles are a little pissy. I don't get it. That said, once I know, I think this could be quite lovely. You good, Katharine? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, Ms. Desiree, number 5, please. I'll read this one. Let's rewind to that bleak mid-July morning 3 months ago when I started the new chapter of my life in Dublin, Ireland, as a digital marketing consultant for an award-winning local ad agency and a single woman. Just 10 hours, 30 minutes, and 7 seconds later, my romance with Cal, the rock and roll god from Southern California, had officially ended, or so I believed. The few pedestrians on Adelaide Road might have noticed a young tanned blonde in a black linen romper, red leather jacket, and heels, mumbling in front of the massive entrance to number 69. That chick was me, and the Wonder Woman balloon dancing above my head, the only souvenir I'd kept from when Cal still loved me. Clad in her famous bustier and tiara, this mile-long rendition of Wonder Woman always got me out of a funk with her flashy smile and a confident gaze. Today, though, she offered meager support. The door behaved like a cranky lover, equally immune to words of endearment and outbursts of rage, and wouldn't open. Icing on the cake, my landlord was unavailable. Hello, you've reached the voicemail of Mr. Gupta. I'm making curry and can't take your call. Joking. Please leave a message, and I'll get back to you soon. My British accent, my British Indian accent. His voicemail message chirped with an accent as heavy as Indian spices. I ain't going there. Lemon, honey, and hot tea would work better for someone caught in this icy rain. A gust of wind sprayed my thighs. I clenched my fist as bitter tears trailed down my cheeks. Okay. Miss Katharine.
Well, I liked the chick right off the bat. She seemed like she was gonna be a nice, give me a contemporary look at. I assume Wonder Woman is the contemporary Wonder Woman, so I made this contemporary. I thought there was some lovely writing. The door behaved like a cranky lover. Into words. I mean, that's quite wonderful. The shift to the landlord was a little trickier to me because I'm busy with Adelaide Road. I assume that's in Dublin, so I wasn't entirely ready for what might be the humor of the Indian landlord, And also, I would, in these days of own voices and approbation, I thought the Indian humor might be a little tricky. I don't know that you'd want to go to the landlord right there, because if the icing on the cake is that there's some kind of problem with the door, but there's already been a problem with the door, I didn't see why this was a major opening point. Whereas I certainly understand that we're going to get fish out of water comedy, as I like to think of it, if we get a woman from contemporary Southern California who goes to Ireland. I think you might want to stay in that world just a little bit to get us oriented to Ireland. But I thought it was a very vivid introduction to what could be memoir or fiction. I don't know for certain. But I thought it was an interesting introduction, definitely. I mean, the camera came right on her. I got it. I got a lot of information that I liked, and you know, inclined to want to know what interesting observations she's going to have from it.
I'll sign on to all that, Katharine. This is the 5th piece in a row that I would cut the opening paragraph for the same reasons all 5 times. I just don't know who the POV is. I don't know why why you're involving me. Let's us, let's you and me. I don't like that kind of, I don't like being spoken directly to by the book. Let's rewind to that bleak mid-July morning 3 months ago. Rewind says to me, I am at a perch somewhere in time and place, and let's leave where I am and go back to that by rewinding. Yet I don't know where that place is. So I don't know why we would start somewhere where we're not going to stay. I don't get why you would establish, let's rewind. And that may seem like a small thing, but I was distracted the entire time wondering, well, where am I? Where am I right now that I'm rewinding from, right? So just start with, on a bleak mid-July morning, you know, 3 months ago. 3 months ago from what? It's just past tense, I don't know. I just say on a bleak mid-July morning, I started a new chapter of my life in Dublin, you know, and just get rid of all this 10 hours later, rock God officially ended, so I believed. I don't know why these mysteries, you know, just the few pedestrians on Adelaide Road might have noticed a young tan blonde. That's not how we think of ourselves. We don't think of ourselves as being somebody other people see, described as a young tan blonde. Just say, in a black linen romper, a red leather jacket, heels, I stood in front of massive entrance number 69 with my Wonder Woman balloon. Just, I don't know why, I don't get all the juggling and the POV of obfuscatory in this. I don't know what I get out of being told, let's rewind, or so I believed, and they might have seen it, and that was me. I'm not paid back for the amount of, I have to chase this POV is what I'm saying. I don't know when I am, I don't know where I am, and I don't know why, what the writer gets out of making me chase the POV. Be clean, be simple, be direct. Tell the reader right off the bat who you are, where you are, when you are, and what you want. And just say, I was here in Adelaide Road, I had this balloon, and because once we start with the Wonder Woman balloon and all that's great. It's funny. It's insightful, it's incisive, it's got dynamics, it's got a door that sticks. I'm getting the writer's perspective, like, you know, like the door doesn't work like a cranky lover. It's like, okay, somebody's having somebody's got a broken heart, somebody's got something they want to say, right? And I really adore once this thing starts. For me, it doesn't start until the Wonder Woman balloon. So this is the 5th piece in a row when I've cut the first couple lines, because they feel like throat clearing. It feels like the writer going, okay, all right, look, this is where we are. I'm going to give you some tips now so you can read the piece. And then when I get into it, I go, I know everything you just told me up in that first paragraph. Why tell me a magician is a powerful person and then show me a magician creating a farm with his hands, right? I know that's what a powerful person is. I know you're a single woman. I know that, you know, I know all that stuff because you tell me all that. You tell me like a cranky lover. I go, okay, this is probably a single woman. Or maybe that's just New York. I don't know. But I'm saying I like it a great deal. I like how authentic. I believe somebody knows Ireland. I believe somebody knows this character in this life. But gang, you don't need to talk directly to the reader ever, ever, ever. It's a narrative. It's not professional writing. Professional writing is you never talk directly to the reader, ever, ever, under any circumstances. And all these paragraphs have done that open early on. And that, I think, is its only flaw, Katharine. I found it engaging, and I'd like to know this gal, and I'd like to follow where she's going, because she's got a hit on her, right? And she's annoyed.
It's very lively writing. I had a different reaction to the first paragraph. I had a very different reaction to the first paragraph. I mean, I thought it was an interesting way to open what I'm kind of thinking might be a memoir. And if it's a memoir and not fiction, because remember, we don't necessarily know when we're just looking this way. I think it was an interesting way of handling all that came before and still getting me in place in where the story is going to start. So that didn't actually bother me in the same way at all. But I am thinking it's memoir.
It does feel like memoir. Yeah. I don't know how long a Mylar balloon will hold its inflation. I suspect it's not 10 hours. So I found the whole Wonder Woman thing a little specious, but I could be wrong. I could have my facts wrong. Look, long and short of it is, this is an engaging piece, and it's written with verve. Careful, again, about cramming too much into a sentence. Few pedestrians, Adelaide Road, young tan blonde, black linen lumber, red leather jacket, heels, mumbling, massive entrance, number 69. By the time I get to number 69, I've lost pedestrians on Adelaide Road. I've lost everything at the beginning of the sentence. So again, gang, trust shorter sentences. The few pedestrians on Adelaide Road might have noticed young tan blonde with black linen jumper, red leather jacket, heels, period. She mumbled in front of the massive entrance, number 69. Just cut the stuff down so that the reader can keep score. You know, it's just, don't cram too much into a sentence. It's a bit much. But yeah, I find it interesting that you like the openings when I don't, and yeah, that's good. I would probably go with Katharine because she's the one who will sell your work. So if you're doing an either or out there, gang, I go with the person who's going to sell it. You ready for the last one, Miss Katharine?
Yes.
All righty. Desiree, where's our producer? There we are. Ah, look. Interesting.
Oh, this is... Wait, who's reading? Is that me or you?
I think it's you, my love.
Chapter 1, breathe. Close your eyes and count how many breaths you take in a minute. Aim for less. Breathing deeply. The first breath starts the journey within. Inhale oxygen, exhale toxin. It's a simple act that gives birth to the extraordinary intimacy of human life. Without breath, there is no life. We are as precious as our breath. Get to know this amazing mechanism. Chapter 2, the child within. Where is your inner child? When was the last time you felt it within? Did you forget in the hurry to move forward? Start by becoming friends with your inner child. It will become your guardian angel, walking beside you in this life. When you are one, though you find your freedom, your enthusiasm for life. Embrace the precious gift that was given to you when you were in this world. David.
It's a little elusive because I don't know if it's a poem. I don't know if these are chapters to a prose piece, and chapter 3 will be the beginning of a story that these are the commandments of. So I lack context, Katharine, to adequately judge this as more than but it's not a poem because this is chapter 1 and chapter 2, unless it's an epic poem. It's written without indentation, so it physically looks like a poem, right? And so I'm a bit at sea as to what to do with it. I'm gonna just say that don't find it. I don't find it particularly enlightening, to be dead honest. These are things that a poem needs to give insight. A poem needs to really plumb the depths of the writer's world and experience and worldview and wisdom and sadness. These are things, inner child, guardian angel, journeys, inhale, exhale. We are as precious as our breath. That's lovely. Get to know this amazing mechanism. To what end? If I study my breathing, I will. I don't know. Someone is trying to tell us through this work that we should embrace and love our lives, and that's a lovely message. But I'll be dead honest. Because I can't judge this as a poem. As a poem, this does not work for me. As opening chapters to somebody's POV, then it's fine. You know, then this is character development and what somebody's going to tell me. But I as a poem, this doesn't rise off the page. I can't do more than that.
I'd make some points. Certainly, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. Let me see if that volume's working. I can appreciate that this is meant to convey discussion and ideas to embrace the precious gifts of life. Whereas precious of our breath is so to breathe, and embrace the precious gift that was given to you in this world is the child within. So I get that we're going to be looking at what you say, what the writer says is the extraordinary intricacy of human life through what is precious. At the same time, we're being given interesting exercises or advice or discussion of what I assume is going to be a book that addresses the journey within. Now, the chapter titles are throwing me because I don't know if that's just for this exercise or if it would actually be laid out this way. My thought would become, or the first thought I have is chapter 1, Breathe, would begin a chapter dealing with breath, and chapter 2 would deal with the inner child. But David speaks a lot about context, and I think that's key to appreciating any first page. In other words, it becomes highly significant. Who is writing this? Is there a program that they have hit upon? Is this part of a spiritual practice or a psychological, retreat? Or what this has grown out of becomes important because just general point to many people. As lovely as these thoughts are, I couldn't find fault with any of them. And yes, you do start to pause and contemplate these things, but it would really need to be introduced to the reader in terms of how they're going to use this book that they've purchased. And that's the first thing an agent is thinking. There's nothing wrong with any of this interesting, advice. But the key thing to understand is if this is being introduced as a work of prescriptive nonfiction, which I'm assuming it is, and I can also be wrong, it's so important to talk about how the reader's going to move through the book and experience the book. There's nothing to argue about in terms of the thoughts, but you have to remember there are a lot of books on things like the inner child or the authentic life, and if you're introducing one, it isn't just the power of your words, which are lovely here. It is so much about making sure that we're primed to take them in because we know what kind of book journey we're going to be on.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't have context for this. I was reading it as you were speaking, and each of these is a lovely thought, and it's clean writing. It is. It's just hard for me to apply. And maybe that's my hesitation. I don't know who's exhorting me. I don't know why I'm being exhorted, and I don't know what these are a larger part of. But somebody cares a great deal about sharing their wisdom with us, and it's here. But yeah, I don't really feel qualified to give this a lot of insight because I still don't know. Like you said, context. I don't know. So
I would add to that, just to jump in, you want to remember that we're always thinking of story context, because certainly the first thing an agent does is tell a story. We work almost the way a producer would. We have to get people excited, and we're not going to get them excited on the conclusion or the comment. We're going to get them excited about the story of the reader buying the book and why they buy the book, and what they want to gain from the book. So, for example, if you introduce a concept like start by becoming friends with your inner child, it will become your guardian angel, that's very, very interesting. But it would need to be part of a larger whole, unless maybe this book is a book of paragraphs like these and meant to be in and of itself the journey. And that's fine, but I would say we still need to know it, because we need that priming. But I see some questions are coming in.
Yeah. So before we take the questions, Kath, before we take the questions, let's pause and thank our 6 very brave authors for sending in their first pages.
Yes, very brave. It's so hard to listen to people critique you. I know how hard it is. And
I got to tell you, I have been writing professionally for 25 years, and I don't want to. I've been doing this a lot, and I would never have the courage to do what these folks did. So first, before we go much further, congratulations to you for having the commitment to your craft and commitment to your work to submit them to this this scrutiny. It was a brave thing to do. I hope Katharine and I gave you some insights and some things to work on and some things to appreciate about your own work. So before we go on, thank you to you 6. Thank you to you, Desiree and Black Chateau, for giving us this opportunity. But there's a lot to like there. There's a lot to like there. There's wit, there's verve, there's eloquence. Take from Katharine and me what you can. You know, what we tried to talk clearly in good sense, or ignore us, because you won't be the first to do that. But thank you for submitting those. That was a joy and an honor to look at, and I'm sure I speak for my Critiki partner. So, questions from the crowd, bring it. All right.
Someone asked if I'd ever critiqued David's writing. I've lived to tell. I think I got one good edit in all the times all the years we've been friends. There was one edit he took. And
I don't even recall that one. All right, so Katharine, I got questions up. Here's the first question. First question is, how important is the first sentence? I've heard people say it's very important thoughts. I have one quick thought, then I'll turn it over to you. A while ago, I don't remember which one it was, the first 2 words were "there was." Now, I, as a teacher of writing and as a writer, am committed that your first 2 words cannot be "it was" or "there was." And I don't care about "it was the best of times," "it was the worst of times." Those are terrible sentences, whether they're famous or not. The reader, you cannot signal to your editor, your agent, your reader that the best you can come up with for your verb was in your first sentence. And that may seem like a simple piece of advice, but please, your first sentence has it's got to do a lot of work, which Katharine will describe for you, but you can't start with "there was," "it was," "we were." And Katharine, take it.
Well, first sentences are important. You know, you'll see this at writers' conferences a lot, but there are first sentence panels and first page panels, because that's all that we're seeing, and that's what you're in charge of. I'm looking, I think the way many agents are looking, at sensibility. What is this writer who's now in charge of my attention doing with that attention? So they are very important, and anything that as I said, I have a thing about commenting, or anything that doesn't put the viewfinder right in front of my face so that I'm transported into a work, what I call a portal. If there's no portal, I can't become excited by that writer, even though I can be very wrong and miss a lot of good stuff. So it isn't that we decide on the first sentence, but we certainly do to a large extent on the first page.
All right, and I'll just adjunct that a little bit. I'm not going to restrict myself to the first sentence, but to the first paragraph or so. You guys heard me wailing about this on the 6 previous pieces. Context is everything. Use your first sentence, second, third, fifth sentences to establish 2 things: POV and setting. Don't worry about stakes just right out of the gate. I don't need to know the Beatles complaining about things just yet. Make sure that I know that I'm set in the Arctic and that I'm staring down through an ice patch at a dead body. Great stuff. I know where I am. The problem is, Katharine and I didn't know who we were. So be clear. You're a ghost. You're not. You are. You are. But use that first sentence and use everything in your first page to set up where you are, all the verities, who, what, when, where, how, why, all that, and your POV, who's talking and where, when, and what are they. That's what the first sentence needs to do. And you can get the threat, you know, like you can get the stakes pretty soon too. But the most important thing you can do is you can set the stage. And by setting the stage, I mean tell your reader who you are. If it's third person, who's talking on my behalf on the page? If it's first person, who's talking to me? We need visuals and we need oral clues. All right, I'm gonna read you another question, Katharine. Let's see. Hold on. What does an agent look at first when getting a query? The first page without knowing the title of the book, the genre, the audience? What's the first thing you look for?
Well, I like to say that a query letter is in a sense a job audition or an interview. So the first thing we're looking at is that letter to decide if we're going to look at the first page. And then often I will just look, you know, without having studied any aspect of the work. I certainly never look at things like word count initially. I just look to see what has the writer done for me lately. You know, it's a place for the bells and the whistles, because we believe, rightly or wrongly, that we're going to see something. We're going to see something on page 1, even paragraph 1, that just is a little sparky, something special, something that rises above. It could be a descriptive moment. It could be use of language. It could be a lot of different things. It's not one thing. But I'm certainly looking to see why that writer has made the decision to send this work, and along with sending the work to any agent, you're saying, this is the best I'm capable of. This is where I've arrived. You're not sending to someone who's looking necessarily to work with you developmentally, although many agents do today. So why is this writer telling me this is their best work? And what is that writer's intention? That's one of the first things I zero in on. And then I ask myself, has that been executed in some way?
Excellent. I'll pause real quick for a plug. So my friend Katharine Sands is the head of the Sarah Jane Fryman Literary Agency. So she is not my agent, but she's one of my dearest friends, and I can tell you she talks to me about her work all the time, and I've never known an agent more caring and more capable than Katharine. So if you're looking for an agent, and find her and contact her.
Oh, very kind.
Well, you know, I didn't want that to go unsaid, Katharine, but you amaze me all the time at how you care for your flock of writers. So I recommend you highly. One day I'll be good enough for you to represent me.
Oh my goodness! How kind.
All right, another question, and I'll take a swing at this one. How important is it to start in the middle of action? I'd say not at all. I'd say it's not only not important; it's a bad idea. Remember, I'll give you an anecdote. So I've been a university professor for a long time, and one of my kids wrote the first line was three, and somebody had jumped off a bridge and was landing at the bottom of the bridge and laying there all dead and mangled, and they thought it was cool that they didn't even give me the 1-2 before the guy jumped, and I said, what? And I said, well, why did you do that? And they said, well, because I read somewhere, was told somewhere to start in the middle of the action. I said, well, unfortunately, I don't care about this guy at the bottom of the ravine. I don't know him. I don't know why he jumped. There's no tension. To me, I feel like I've seen a picture of something black and white from 1930. It's a little distant. I don't know who the guy is. I don't know why he jumped. I don't know any of the circumstances. So I will say, do not start anywhere near the middle, or even don't start at the beginning of the action. Start as I told you. Start like it's the beginning of a play. The curtain goes up, and what do you see? You see the set, and the characters walk on stage, and that's where you should start. Set the stage for your book. Put your reader in an easy chair. I've heard this advice, you need to grab the reader. And I'm like, look, I'm a big guy, right? I'm 6'6", 260. You knock on my door and grab me, we're going to have a problem. Don't grab me. Invite me. We don't grab readers. We invite readers. Here, come on in. Let's. Here's a cheese plate, and here's a sofa, and here's a light IPA I picked for you, and let's chat and get to know each other. And then we can get to tension and stakes and things. But this whole bit about grabbing the reader at the beginning, not a good idea, because I have not turned on the context of my emotions yet. I don't care about the stakes. I don't care about the characters. I need to know where we are, when we are, who we are. Trust me. Take your opening sentences and your opening paragraphs and dedicate them to setting. Where are we? Where are we? Who are we? And then you can start bringing in little bits of, then the Beatles can start getting annoyed. Once we know where we are. But imagine if the first line of that, well, the Beatles were upset, we'd all be like, what? Paul, Ringo, George? I mean, we wouldn't know. So context is everything. Katharine, I'm not going to give you a chance to answer that one because we have a lot of questions, and I'm going to turn you on to the next one.
Wait, I see a few I missed here. There's one about finding a supportive environment to do first page critiques.
That one's way down. I've got it.
Oh, whoops. Well, I'll do that one, and then we can go back.
All right, go get them.
There are some wonderful resources now, all kinds of things, paying attention to that. And if you want to send me, anyone wants to send me an email at Katharine@sarahjanefreiman.com, I'm happy to provide some resource lists that I've been compiling. But David, you had one you were dying to answer?
Well, it says how much rewriting is needed. And since that's an authorial question, I'll stab at that one, and then you grab the next one. I'd say a lot, a whole lot. I'm a fairly stern editor and a fairly clean writer, and I routinely, when I edit my work, take 12 to 20% of the language out, gone, just gone. I did this last week on the book I'm writing now. I pulled out 15%. I pulled out of a 40,000 words I edited. I pulled out 7,000. That's like 18%. 7,000 words. I mean, what is that? 15, 16 solid pages of text. It's gone. So yes, rewriting is very important. Do not, people, I beg you, do not listen to this advice. When a creative writing teacher tells you just get it out of your hands, you know that one, just get it on the page and work with it later. My answer to you is, okay, so are your editorial skills so good that you can edit automatic writing? No. Write slowly, write carefully, write meticulously. Pause every once in a while, stop in your storytelling, go back and edit. Edit as you go. Rewriting is writing. Do not listen when people tell you just get it out of your hands. No. If that's, you're just kicking that can down the road to give yourself a problem to have to edit later on. Rewriting is writing. Make no doubt about that. Katharine, do you read the prologue first, if there is one, or do you skip it? I have heard prologues are out of date.
You know, I know there's some kind of war against the prologue, but I don't subscribe to that. I think prologues can add a nice mood or an interesting introduction. I don't mind things like nonlinear narrative, and I think prologues can work. That said, I do know they're currently not all that popular, possibly because there's such an immediate need to create the grabby or hook-driven read for the reader. So I know I've heard people don't like them, but I think sometimes they do a good job. One thing I'll mention that I tell clients is how a work is sold or might travel from you to an agent and from an agent to an editor is not necessarily the way it would be published. So maybe the best advice is always make sure something happens right away that isn't necessarily setting the mood for a longer time at the most in your work, or that wouldn't require more immersion to appreciate.
If I could just codicil that, Katharine, real quick, I think prologues are out of fashion because they're so often done badly. They send a message to the reader that the writer was not able to organically blend this information into the story. To isolate it, segregate it, and put it up front implies, well, I had no other way to blend this in downrange. So here it all is in one place. Prologues, I do not subscribe to your, I have, it's been, I don't know that I've ever read a prologue that I thought was necessary. Because as soon as I read the first 2 chapters, well, everything in the prologue was just there. Very similar to those opening sentences that I was tagging. I find prologues are often not necessarily badly done, but unnecessary. And unnecessary words and pages and chapters are death to a book, which must roll. And I find that I find prologues, though they may be eloquent and beautifully done, are often unnecessary. And it is information that is better handled in the organic flow of the book. Question for you, Miss Katharine. What is the most memorable first line you have ever read?
I love the first line of Gone with the Wind. Scarlett O'Hara was not beautiful, but men seldom realized it was caught by her charm.
Mine is Billy Pilgrim has come unstuck in time. Or Cool Hand Luke could cut the biggest bean farts east of the Mississippi. Pick 'em. Katharine, do you recommend writing groups or other? Hold on. Do you recommend writing groups or other writers help critique the first page or beta readers? How can we get the first page ready?
Yes, I had mentioned before, if anyone sends me an email, I have a list of some resources that I think can be helpful. But yes, you're seeing a lot of classes and sessions now at writers' conferences addressing first pages and first sentences. I'll move to the next question, which asks any ideas on what genres or topics are in demand right now? What are agents looking for? An important thing to say about agents in general is we are usually inventoried a year or even longer, or even more. A publisher usually knows its book program, a year or so out. So what we look for today, it would only come out a year or even 2 years from now. Things that we're hearing a lot about are female relationships. I don't just mean necessarily gay ones. I mean sisters and mother-daughter, family relationships, identity, immigrant stories, diversity, inclusion. These are huge words right now.
I'd like you guys to key in on something Katharine said, very important. By the time you write a vampire novel, it's 2 years old. I mean, if vampires are happening right now, or stories of immigrant struggles are great right now, you got to remember that they were written before they became a fad. Very difficult to track fads in Katharine's business because when the book comes out, it's going to be a whole nother cultural environment in America and the world in a year, 18 months when that book's ready. So I've been told to tell people to not try to think about faddish writing or genre writing, but to really write the best book you can. And Katharine, I'm not an agent, of course, but this is the advice I've been told, and I believe it. I never chase genres. I write the book that moves me, that I feel has to be in the world. I give it the best shot I got. By the time you write a wizard book, there's been 205 wizard books by the time yours comes out. Just something to watch. That's one of those subjective truths. All right, we got time for a couple more questions, Katharine. Piggybacking on an above question, someone also wants to know if you recommend any first pages of popular novels to look at for inspiration.
I would hesitate to name novels to be derived in any way. I think a better piece of information that I think I can share is go surf on Netflix and see what you're attracted to. See what's trending. This speaks to the earlier question as well. You know, they have amazing metadata, and you can see on Amazon bestseller lists and Netflix trendings what people are attracted to. I'd also wanted to quickly add that there are 5, count them, 5 new imprints being led by women. Melinda Gates is doing a Moment of Lift, and there's one called Zando, one called Sibi. They're brand new. They're all being led by publishing veterans, and I think that says a lot about a hunger for female-led narrative, and dare I say, female leadership. We're definitely seeing that as something that's more than a trend. And someone says, Katharine mentioned own voices. How important is that in submissions? It's become so important. You know, I'm in an agents group, and we sometimes talk about the problem of maybe representing someone who's borrowing from another culture. And then, of course, we joke, well, what, you have to be a heroin addict to write about a heroin addict? You know, it's really become highly significant, though, if someone puts a character in an African village, that they have a very direct tie to that African village, either through research or living there 6 months. But own voices has become a demand, really.
Last question, and that's a good answer, Katharine. It's something it's one of the reasons why I like historical fiction, because everybody was dead when stuff I read about. Can't blame me. Do you like stories with unreliable narrators? And I will answer an emphatic no. Emphatic no. I think it's taboo. I think that it's cheating. I think that it is a complete and utter violation of the rules of POV. If you have, first of all, there is no such thing as a narrator. The narrator is dead. The narrator died sometime in the 1960s. Might have died in the 1860s. There are no narrators. Do not write books with narrators. It's an old voice. Here's something people don't understand, that writing, like every other art form, has progressed. Nureyev is a better dancer than a guy who was dancing 100 years earlier. We have better painters, better designers, better musicians, better football players. We have better writers today than we've ever had. Writing has advanced. One of the technological advances of writing is getting rid of the narrator. Narrators don't exist. There is no, let me tell you a story from a third-person view. That's first person. Do not have a narrator. There's a thing called the fictive dream. The fictive dream is where the reader is supposed to believe that he or she has an intimate relationship with the voice in the book, but the voice in the book is not an individual. It's not a narrator. The voice of the book is almost, again, the fictive dream, a magical concoction of all the language in the book that forms a story in my head. But don't fall into the realm of thinking that you can hide the POV. POVs do not, the opening line should not be, Captain John York pulled back on the stick and climbed into the clouds. He does not think of himself as Captain John York. He's John. He's York. The moment you say Captain John York, you've taken the reader and placed the reader outside this character, observing the character, right? And that's not a modern voice. A modern voice is the reader is inside the character's eyes, behind the character's eyes. And if you are truly writing a novel where I, the reader, am empathetic with the character, then I know every thing he or she knows. And you can't hide from me, right? You can't be unreliable because the character can't hide from me. I am the character. So no unreliable narrators. Katharine, you want to wrap it up?
Well, I think that's an interesting point of view. I tend to be less...
We have to wrap up.
I'm wrapping up, less rule-driven. In order to wrap up, I would say, you know, people pioneer things or revisit things all the time. The most important advice is always to bring your best spirit and your most interesting work to the industry that is always looking for interesting work.
All right, and I'm going to answer one last question because it's self-serving, and that is, what books does David have that we should read? The answer is 15 of them, but the most recent is a book called Isaac's Beacon. Isaac's Beacon, I, in effect, rewrote Leon Uris's Exodus. Katharine read it. Katharine likes it. But yeah, that would be the book. If I was going to ask you to read a book of mine, folks, it'd be Isaac's Beacon, available everywhere, Amazon, yada, yada. I think it's the best I can write. So there's a plug for me. Thank you, whoever asked that question. Thank you for asking. I will go first. Everybody, thank you again for your patience with us. Katharine and I are old friends. We argue over one kitchen table or another year in and year out. And thank you for being patient with us. Thank you for being indulgent. Keep writing. Keep treating it like a craft. Keep treating it like a career. not many hobbyist writers do well. So take it seriously. Listen to the professionals. Get great agents like Katharine. Read, write, stay with it. And God bless and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And my email again is Katharine at SARAHJANEFREYMANN.com. Happy to answer questions and to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us today.